Well, hello there and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to tell you a few stories about various things that have taken place over the last 10 years of the business. Hi, Ryan here from Owl Adventures. It's a lovely morning here in late spring. I'm just flying one of the hawks this morning before we start the day again of displays. And it made me think, yes, there's so many stories over the last 10 years. So in this video, a little selection of some of those stories. A quick one to start with. We had a Lana Falcon some years ago. We were training it, flying it, and we're taking it to different locations so it could be used to flying in different places, as our birds do travel around to different places at different events. And on this particular day, it was a cold morning, I believe, if I remember rightly, possibly February. It'd been snowing recently, it was quite misty. And the Falcon flew rather well for a couple of minutes, then disappeared over a tree line. We gave it about 3 or 4 minutes, had a look on the GPS, on the map there, and yes, it had stopped. Little grey dot, which meant the satellite couldn't see exactly where it was, just knew where it last was. And that suggested it was on the ground in this woodland. If it took off again, it would pick up the signal. Okay, where do we have to go? Oh, it's crossed a railway line and a river. Right, hiking began. A good 2.5 hours there and 2.5 hours back. It'd been snowing recently, so it was rather muddy. There were vines to climb over and things to get through. There was some shotguns in the distance of what we may have been trespassing just briefly. I don't know. And eventually I climb up, sweating away to the top of this little hill in the woods there. And I'm looking around, going, well, I can't see him. I'm looking up, I can't see him. And then eventually, yes, he was just sat on a bit of wood, blending in, camouflaging naturally. Picked him up and there we go, hike back again. So that was a fun day. So I hope you'll enjoy the rest of these stories, and some of them are quite bizarre. And the stories don't get much more bizarre than this. A number of years ago, we were doing a little flying display with the barn owl out here in the museum gardens, perfectly normal. And the barn owl flew into these bushes over here. It was at that point that a couple of heads popped up. Let's just say a young man and a woman. Maybe they looked a bit like they lived in the jungle, should we say, as they had a lack of clothing on, and looked very surprised and shocked, especially to see a crowd of people watching what they were getting up to. Of course, the falcon at the time couldn't really think what to do other than just stick his hand up and call the bird back. So, there are many different stories of interest to do with the various birds we have, and this one here is Henrietta. And like many big owls, when they're used in flying shows, they sometimes, if they feel they want to, and we let them, because we've no choice, will sit up a tree for quite a while. To be fair, Henrietta here has probably only really been up a tree maximum 30 minutes. So she's pretty good. But we've had the other birds though, like Eva, our Canadian great horned owl. She's the worst for it. She's been up trees for several hours before. And one particular occasion, which I remember, which was quite remarkable really, was when I was doing a flying show at Harlow Car, over near Harrogate there. And it's a lovely arena. Audience is fantastic. The birds generally fly really well there. And on this particular day, we were doing the flyover, which is where we get some volunteers to lie on the ground, usually children, and the owl will fly over them really low and see how close it can get. It's a really thrilling little moment. So we were just setting it up with Eva. And at that point, she flew up to this tree. Okay, no problem. I had Ollie flying as well, the eagle owl. So he then did the flyover. I finished the flying show. I then had about an hour to try and get Eva down, but she was looking quite distracted up the tree. So I tried my best, throwing food down, whistling, and I realised she wasn't going to come down. So before the second show, I said to everybody, just to let you know, there is an owl up the tree. We're going to do the flying show as best we can anyway. I couldn't fly any small birds, of course, because with the big aggressive owl up in the air like that, there's a risk that it would actually eat one of my smaller birds. So safety first. But I was doing the flying show, I was flying Ollie, and the crazy thing is that when he was about to do the flyover in that second show, I looked at him, I whistled, and Eva then suddenly flew down from the tree and appeared almost as if out of nowhere and landed back on the ground. So essentially, she returned to the flying show at the same point at which she left it before. And people watching thought I'd planned it because it was that incredible. Just goes to show you can't write this stuff. So this story I'm going to tell you involves Harris hawks. Now these two Harris hawks are our current pair. We've got Jed over here, he's an 11-year-old Harris hawk, and we've got Roland over here, who's currently 4 years old. Now many falconers will tell you, you can fly Harris hawks just for recreational reasons, for display work for example. And you don't have to go out hunting with them. However, they are aggressive killing machines. So if you're going to do that, be warned, there is a good chance that at some point they'll end up catching something. Now, Jed over here, we've had for many, many years, he's actually never caught anything at all. However, Roland over here, he once chased a squirrel, that got away, and he has also had 2 pigeon here in the museum gardens, which we don't encourage, but it can happen, of course. But the story I want to tell you about is all to do with a hawk we had called Leon, who we had for many years. He was a male Harris hawk, just like Roland and Jed here. And he had a very interesting flying technique. When we flew him in shows, he didn't land on the hand traditionally for a bit of chicken. He would instead try and steal the food. So he would swoop back and forth on a regular basis. And he would oftenly chase after pigeon and things like that. Now, on one occasion, one summer a few years ago, we were flying him in a lovely open park. He flew into a tree about 20 feet high, and he did in fact catch a pigeon. Now the crucial thing is, usually when one of the hawks catch something like that, they drop it on the floor and we can go and intervene and take that off them and feed them with something else and do what is appropriate. But because he was up the tree on a very lovely strong tree branch, it made us unable to get up there and deal with it. And we watched him there filling up on this pigeon. He ended up sitting in that tree for 3 days. We checked him every day, he wasn't moving, and then eventually after day 3 he had moved, and it was in full leaf, so it's quite difficult to spot him. So I used a lure, let's say leather pouch with a string attached, popped some food in that, and we were swinging that about, throwing it on the floor, seeing if he'd come for it. And he did appear, and he tried to steal it just like he would off the hand. But then ensued a rather lengthy cat and mouse game where I was trying to get him to land on the food, he kept trying to steal it, and eventually he actually caught another pigeon, this time on the ground. I thought, fantastic, I'll be able to get hold of him now. As I got closer, creeping up on him, he saw me and decided to fly back up a tree, leaving that pigeon on the ground. Now that's very significant, you see, because when a bird of prey catches its meal, it believes it owns that meal, it deserves to eat it. So the fact that he was willing to leave it alone rather than be near me was a good indication he wasn't really that happy being handled by me anymore. And at that point I thought, yes, we'll get this bird to somebody else. So what I did then was I tied some rope to the pigeon and began dragging it around the park to attract his attention, which, as you can imagine, got quite a crowd. A lot of people thought I was rather strange. And luckily he landed on it, gripped that pigeon, I reeled him in slowly and managed to get him back again. So we moved Leon then onto a hunting falconer, traditional falconer if you like, so we could go out and chase prey as much as he liked. Now this next story is quite funny. Dusty here, our dark-breasted barn owl, just 2 years old. And when we had her from a young bird, we hand-reared her, of course, nice and tame. In fact, she is the tamest thing in the world. And when we train them to fly, we essentially whistle and pop our hand up, and they learn to fly to the hand for that bit of food. Well, we soon learned that Dusty here will happily fly to anybody's hand, even if they're not wearing a glove, or even if they're not aware there's an owl in the vicinity. You see, here in the museum gardens, we get lots of tour guides coming through with big groups of people from all over the world. There's lots of history to talk about, and on one occasion, there was a gentleman with a big group of tourists, and he was talking about the tower there. And he raised his arm in the air, just like you would if you were calling a bird, I suppose. And I could see Dusty, he was flying free at the time, flying directly towards him. He had his back to her, he had no glove on, he didn't know she was coming, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. So yes, he got quite a surprise, did a bit of a yelp, danced around a bit, and then when he realised what was going on, tried to pat himself down and say, oh, there's a lovely bird display over here, but, well, it's a shame no one filmed it, that's all I'm going to say. So yes, Dusty, she's like a magnet to the glove, aren't you? Incredible. So there you have it, some rather interesting stories and an insight on what it's like to work in an industry like this. So I'm going to now clean my van, it's a bit filthy. Hope you have a good day and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.